Igor Mukanova, she's the chair of the project of legal assistance to people who have drug addiction, and she will outline the problem. Thank you. Thank you very much. Today it's June 26th. It's an international day to fight drug trade. And on this day, we spoke to the president of Ukraine to change the punitive policy in Ukraine. Several months ago, we remember that Ukraine people who are innocent were killed, were beaten here several months ago. As to drug addicts, it's very easy to use withdrawal state as withdrawal state and to arrest them. Very often they falsify, they counterfeit documents of these people about and also they make criminal cases and against these people. Now I'd like to give the floor to Tetyana Gololobova, who was a patient and who can share her story with us. My name is Tetyana. I was sentenced for use and having drugs, but I have a friend who was very sick, and she had cancer, and she was a drug addict, and she didn't have money for drugs. And she asked me, as a friend, to give her some drugs, and I agreed, and I brought. In a couple of hours, I left her for a course, and because at that time I was a student, and a couple of hours she called me and invited for a bus stop near McDonald's, and at the request of the police, and they captured me right away. People who were not they were not police. That was not. So they didn't have police uniform. They were like drug addicts. They look like drug addicts. So they have handcuffs and. Not a woman searched me, but a young man, and he got into my pocket and pulled out money, but I didn't have money. Then they brought me to the police office, and on the table there was drugs on the table. They told me, so will you confess that you committed crimes? I told her that I didn't commit any crime. She's sick and she has health problems. She cannot make money. They took me to the court and they beat me as they can, and for no one to tell that they were beating me. Then they took me again to the office in the cellar, and they wanted to take fingerprints. They put a wab into that container with extract of drugs, and there were some people who witnesses, and they were drug addicts, and they were sentenced several times. But they were allowed to have handcuffs, and they were allowed to arrest people. Then in the office, I didn't confess for long. Then they asked me to close the window. They told me. They asked me. They didn't call me by my name. They were abusing me and using swearing words. And they asked me to close the small window. When I raised my hand, and my back was ready for them to beat me. Then they beat me, and they sent me to EVS. They took all analysis, and not from me, but everything was already on the table with the help of the assistants who were former drug addicts because they cooperated with them. They sent me to a prison, and they sentenced me for 5 years. And it's I helped a person. She had ulcer, and during the court proceedings, because there were defense lawyers, and they suggested to have a lawyer who was working for their department and he connected to everything. She told me to say this and this and this, and they sentenced me for 5 years. Then they we sent an appeal, and they found out that they counterfeited everything, but you cannot return my health, which I lost, and it's not the first case. I just told my story from my own life. That was the last time. There were many other cases when police using that people consume drugs and that they're weak and their health requires. This is awful when you are in a police office to be in the state of abstinence. When you see that on the table, you see a syringe filled with a drug, and he tells you from which article of the criminal law would you like to take crimes? For how many years? So that's an agreement. Someone who is sick, who is a drug addict, and who see that a syringe and they know that they could improve their health, and they are ready to take any crime on themselves. This is very brief. Recently, a week ago, my friend, we buried him because of police. He suffered of police. Now he's dead because they damaged his health. They killed him, but his heart was not able to stand beating. You cannot take him from underground. I knew that person, and I knew that he had weak health, but not that much, not that weak. And I hope that our respected people who understand that drug addicts they are sick people, they should be treated and not killed, and they're people, they can help other people like I do now. Well, I work and I tell teenagers that they should not do that. What I do now? I work in LGV group, and I work with people from kids from the street and teenagers. I'm trying to take out people from young kids from the streets. We can feed them, we can wash them, we can give them clothing, and we can give them a job. To see all the doctors, we have we have a hospital where they are treated in Zaporozhye. So we are working with, as a social worker, I speak to them and I show to not only myself, but I give them some other examples. I invite people who were in prison many times and and who spent many years in their prisons. I don't want our young people to go through that. I would like us to have young, healthy, beautiful people for Ukraine to develop and grow, and for our life to be good. So, if someone has a question, I will be happy to answer. Let's listen to all the experts, and then we will ask. Then there will be questions. I would like to invite an expert, a lawyer, and a lawyer from legal. Mr. Kucheryuk. Alexander, tell us how legal. What about legislation when such situation happens? These people should be treated, and but they become victims. Good afternoon. Today is a day of struggle or drugs fight. As a practice in law, I have an impression there is no fight. because I see that special department as abnormal, and it includes people who consume drugs and they distribute drugs. So to stop channels of drugs, nobody is trying to do that, and there are several reasons for that. And first of all, legislation. Very low threshold of that of drugs, after which criminal responsibility begins. Let's take, for example, opium. It's a drug. It is made of synthetic preparations. A gram, after which 5,000, 5,000. That's dust, and then but it's enough to have that dust on you, and you'll be a subject of criminal responsibility, which means that you'll be sentenced and you'll get into all the databases of police, and that will be a spot on a man all life, and the attitude will be so different compared to people who were never sentenced. And plus Article 309, everybody knows, for storage and drugs, and from 80 fine from 850 hryvnia and up to 3 years in sentence. So this is the range in legislation between minimal and maximal sanction, and that gives a ground for violations, for abuse by police. If you take a crime on yourself, you will get pay 850, not for the use, but for the use in drugs. That's nobody's punished for that, but for storage and for warehousing, they are punished because they are dealers. They stored. They have 309 and 307. There is responsibility for dealers, yes, for selling drugs, but among the sellers there are also drug addicts, because the real dealer, professional, never uses drugs. That's why these are sellers in parentheses. The fight against such people is not beneficial for anyone. And this Article 309. If you take a crime for yourself, you get 850. You pay a fine, and you go home. If you don't accept it, if you don't take it as a crime, then you'll go to the prison. So in here, it's anything but a fight against drugs. Career police, so they grow. They make a plan of finding criminals. So if an investigator could promise to Tetyana less, for example, but the punishment is not an investigator who decides on a sentence. That is done by the court. So that's why I promise that they will sentence you. They will not sentence you, and they will go home. It's not anything realistic. It's just an effort to get a confession when he doesn't have enough of evidence. In this way, they force them to give evidence, to confess, to take it, and then you'll get a punishment, and you get it from a court. That's why he promises you 850 hryvnia fine, but the court can decide to send you to a prison. And the last point, and the criminal code is a new one. It's in force for a year and a half, but the rules and psychology of police is the same. Methods are the same. And even they abused the new code like they abused the old one. So, for a more efficient fight against drugs. There should be some changes in the legislation. Do you understand do you know which legislation should we have to improve the situation? Yes, I would raise that threshold after which criminal responsibility begins. It should be higher loaded because this 0.005 is like dust from drugs. What are the norms, thresholds in the world? I don't know about the whole world, but let's say in European countries. I don't want to make conclusions and to say that about what I read in internet or in newspaper. I've never been to Europe, so I don't know how they solve that issue there. But I personally imagine how we can solve it for us. If we raise this threshold for criminal responsibility, then there will be more room for criminal administrative responsibility, and where they can be fined, and it's a very good article for the budget. I would try to decriminalize that Article 309, the first part of it. So for storage in, there is no need to sentence people to prisons for storage in, because as the person before me told you, that drug addicts, those are sick people. They're sick. And from legal point of view, his will is suppressed by the illness, that pain he feels, and any crime even is like planned crime. So, but he is not planning to get it and to storage it, and his idea is to kill pain and suffering. So from the point of view of legal construction, this article is not correct. And we could also, maybe there's a need to work with police and to make police to follow the code. For what? There should be criminal responsibility of drug addicts. They have addiction. They do it without unconsciously, without any intention. You believe that they should not be sentenced or punished. What for? Should we have criminal responsibility and high exclusively for selling under one condition? Another condition of correct and legal work of police. Only then. Otherwise, we will get like now the situation, the same situation like now. Drug addicts will be sentenced, and there should be very serious punishment against people who sell drugs. Now it's not a struggle. It's not a systemic struggle. It's not a systemic approach. In Ukraine, there is a state service to control drugs, and we have an expert, a representative and advisor of the head of state service for drug control. I would like to hear his comment on how the state service can help us to reduce the number of drugs. Thank you very much for inviting me for this serious conversation or discussion. And firstly, it's very difficult in Ukraine, and we forget that tens, hundreds, thousands of people suffer a day, and the problems they have, they cannot wait. Those problems must be solved immediately. Today we speak about the problem of rights of people who are drug addicts. The main question is how to approach these people. What should be the attitude to these people? First of all, to those who are really sick, who require social, as people who require social and healthcare support, or like to criminals who use drugs and sell drugs. People in countries that would like to solve the problem, they strengthen criminalization, and they believe that police can successfully handle the problem. It has happened. probably more than 10 years, Ukraine also took a course to solve this problem in such a way. And as an example, the state program to fight drugs and drugs crimes was approved for 2010, and it's provided a bigger number of police by 3,000 more policemen to fight against this problem. The number of policemen, how did it influence in the situation with drugs, on the situation with drugs? And if in 2003, in the official register in the Ministry of Healthcare and Interior, there were 110,000, 110,000. We had registered in 5 years. We had almost 2 times more of drug users. And so then the more police doesn't influence on this problem. This is the second problem. I agree with those experts who spoke that the main object of criminal prosecution in this field is not a seller of drugs, not a non-drug businessman or mafiosi. The main object is a consumer of drugs. It has happened in Ukraine that a big part of the drug addicts they make money selling drugs to others, and they are consumers of drugs. They are objects of police persecution, and we see that 50% of all were sentenced. And that is Article 1, Part 1, Article 309, like storage of drugs. 20%, Article 307, just for selling, but more than half, that is Article 309. That brings, first of all, to criminalization of drug business and latency of drugs users. After the first use and up to see first visit to the doctor, if someone is not afraid to speak to a doctor, if one can go to a doctor. Unfortunately, in Ukraine, people speak to doctors when it's after 3-5 years of drug consumption. It's very difficult to treat them, so it has a very negative impact on treatment. It enlarges a number of offenders in penitentiary institutions. If in prisons one is has HIV, that those who use the same syringe, they will be also infected, and that's a serious problem because they come back to the society. And HIV infected, we had about 40% among drug users, and because of medical, psychological, and other measures, we have about 20% of them now. And the doctors are afraid to give them recipes for painkillers, and hundreds of people who suffer because they cannot get painkillers. That painkillers, that is the part of their life, and they cannot get them because doctors are afraid to use them, to use those preparations. So when we analyze the situation, the state service came to a conclusion that we should make decisive steps to change the factor of drugs policy from criminal to more humanitarian, that which provides assistance to drug addicts as sick people. We have it in our strategy up to 2020, and we speak clearly about the need to decriminalize this work, and then we initiated changes to the main order, which is a ground to identify or to decide whether to take to criminal responsibility or to apply administrative means. That is an order 188 of Ministry of Healthcare. It's enforced since 2002. They amended if when new preparations come to legal trade. On which stage are these changes? Look, since 2002 and 2010, and the letter of Ministry of Interior, Ministry of Healthcare, they reduced the number of drugs. And since 2010, those are norms like 5 over 1,000 gram and others are enforced. When we analyzed the situation, we decided that this threshold should be higher. To do that, we used some scientific approach. We spoke to experts in this field, the field of drugs policy and practice, and doctors who know about the dose drug addicts take. So first of all, we thought that at the recommendations, when they decide on the size or amount of drugs, you should up to 10 daily doses. Those are not big doses. This is when administrative sentence can be used, administrative punishment. Then 305 in criminal code provides big and especially big doses, and so 3 levels and not big doses, big and especially big. As I told you, in fact, Article 1 of Part 1 of 309 works and brings to the criminal responsibility for doses that are not big but higher than small. That's how that table works. So these changes you're talking about, they change. Do they raise that threshold about 30 of drugs in around on the market? We decided to raise the threshold. The commissioner decided to raise the threshold by 10 times at the recommendation of Healthcare Ministry and experts I told you about. And as you understand, these substances are in illegal circulation. You cannot give a recipe for that. So there is a difficulty with a complication, what kind of a dose there should be. So only experts can decide. That order, that draft order, was signed by Healthcare Ministry, by departments, and by Healthcare Minister Musi. A week or two ago, that order was signed by Mr. Tymoshenko, who's from legal state service, and it was sent to two different bodies of state power according to the agenda we have. A week, 2 ago, knowing that one of the main subjects of application of that norm, that will be police, were invited for the meeting, representatives from Minister of Interior. Unfortunately, they did not support those proposals in this order, though they told that raising such a threshold that should take place. It's time to do that. But their objection is, first of all, the majority of criminal cases are initiated for that number of cannabis, which is not more than 10 grams. We suggested so a lot of cases will not even start if we raise that threshold. We understand that. And that is a realistic step which will protect those who don't distribute drugs but just consume them. Second, I believe it's important for them. First, we include such a paragraph into this order that if police takes these drugs of plant origin and should identify the amount of drugs in those plants. Why did we do that? Because we apply this norm for all the chemical substances, and And earlier it was only if you have 5 grams of cannabis, then they will take you to court. And but there is a drug in cannabis, but life goes on, and in Kharkiv Institute of Cannabis 20 years ago, they have known cannabis without drugs, and they sell it all over the world. It may happen when those 5-10 grams of someone can have those 5-10 grams, and those are not drugs, and that's just grass. But a person can be taken to criminal responsibility, and the problem is not that for such for expertise we should buy additional equipment for expert labs. We disagreed to that proposal. We believe that if there is a need to buy, that's up to those who use these laws. People must not suffer because of that. And there are some other issues. I would like to ask you to support our position. As you see, this changes an attitude to such category of people. You have to be honest. This is a problem not about 1 or 2, 10. This is about hundreds or thousands of those who are drug addicts in Ukraine. In 2012, we held an international scientific conference, and we invited Mr. Tetyayev, who's a director from Kharkiv Academy of Yaroslav Mudry. He gave such numbers. In average, every year, they started about 50,000-60,000 cases in around this illegal drugs trade. He told that in 20 years, that's 1 million people were brought to criminal responsibility. Just imagine, do we want our country to be criminal? So I believe that these steps which were done by our committee with the support of healthcare ministry they're correct, and they are meant to protect these people. And I believe that it will be this order will be signed and it will be used in practical life. Stay here. I would like to invite Alexandra and you. Let me just give me a minute. You see, if to generalize all of this, lawyers, the first time they appealed, asking the president to support healthcare ministry and to approve these changes. We have in the materials this table, which is about the volume in other countries. It's incomparable. For example, if heroin is 0.00005, in Austria it's 1 gram, 3 grams. And we know that these in those countries they don't have that as many drug users as we. Maybe because of such norms, because resources which instead of investing into police and fight for the police to fight that, they invest into health care to protect it, to diagnose and cure. So Ukraine is using very, very tough measures against these people, and this policy is not helpful. The policy of punishment is not helpful. We have, please support our letter to the president. As a moderator, let me ask you a question. This order that Volodymyr spoke about, it seems like it's a huge step from the state service to control drugs. Will it be helpful? Will it help you to solve this problem? Will it help you to raise those thresholds so that the order will be approved and or regulation will be approved, and though maybe Interior Ministry will support this regulation. That regulation will be signed by the Minister of Healthcare, and will it be helpful to you? It will help, in a sense that will stop breaking lives of people who are arrested for the first time. If there will be administrative responsibility, a person has a chance to think. They are not. They don't get into the prison. They don't get this spot for the whole life, and so I believe it's positive, and we'll have 40% less of criminal cases, and it will be easier for our courts to work. So the next step is to raise responsibility of dealers who supply drugs under the condition that these are realistic dealers, really who do that, professionally, who make on that. And if it's about drugs dealers who sell in big amount, who just don't share a dose, and raising this threshold is not a panacea. In our view, there should be a package of measures, improvement of medical service. 3-5% from those who require medical treatment, but objectively not more than 20% want to be treated, and 80% don't want. So this the issue of trust to healthcare, to the state. We need to help to these people who cannot leave this problem of addiction by themselves. We should help them to overcome it, for them not to be social outcasts of our society. So we should help them. Thank you very much. I hope that journalists who are here, that they will support you and your invitations. Our next speaker will be at 12:30. Thank you.